Hey there, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the Starseed Ministry. It is September 20th, 2022. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. This is usually streamed on Mondays, but I took a long weekend, the last family camping trip of the season, so we're doing the ministry today on Tuesday. So I still hope everyone had a good weekend. The start of their week is going as smoothly as possible. The sage just keeps burning. I'll take that for what it's worth, I suppose, today. How is everyone doing? It's been quite a weekend, hasn't it? We had our third quarter moon, which means we're now officially in the last lunar quarter of this cycle with a new moon that started in Virgo. We're going to have our new moon in Libra on the 25th of September. We're going to talk about the earthquakes that happened over the weekend, the space weather that seems to be relevant to this moment, just touch on the date of the 24th just a little bit, just to give ourselves a chance to check in with that. And then I'm going to go over the astrology. I have a reading to share with you today. And there's so many interesting synchronicities that I didn't even know about or imagine until I was putting all of the content together for this transmission. So there does appear to be, a natural flow into change, right? That this is part of the harmonious balance of reality and nature, and that things do shift and that things do change, and they change in real time, and we experience them that way. So sometimes, though, that natural flow of change can happen very suddenly, very powerfully, like a strike of lightning. And there's some interesting connections to the really big earthquake that happened yesterday in Mexico. And I'll just wait to get into it because it's pretty interesting how it all seems to be connected and what that really means for us. But again, remember that lightning is itself an action of homeostasis, right? Is the release of energy based on the natural compulsion of nature to find balance. So when the atmosphere is ionized too much, then the electrons in those ions will seek balance and they will move. And lightning and electricity is really the after effect, the release of power of those electrons moving. So keep that in mind as well as we go through this material that we have Mars in Gemini. It's actually in a really favorable position right now in terms of being able to take an instinctual bolt of lightning or spark of transformational energy and turn it into a mental or intellectual maturity in some ways to direct it. And again, it may be a powerful, drastic, bone-rattling event, but it also does represent the natural flow of change. And we can juggle that type of energy as long as we understand that it's not something that necessarily is anything but a balancing of the charge in the atmosphere, a balancing of the scales, a balancing of our own polarity. And I feel like over the weekend, that's what was happening, right? That we were in the process of actually establishing our place, right? That was the astrology report from Friday. And in that process of establishing our place and what is a natural balance, things shifted around. And yes, we are adjusting to that. Yes, there will be more things to come. But, as expected, all of those really intense astrological transits that picked back up on Friday the 16th, our third quarter moon, it was a pretty exciting and certainly wasn't boring weekend. So I just want to check in, see how people are feeling. We had the Queen's funeral yesterday. It also feels like there's a sense of closure almost, or a sense of finality in terms of what all of that represented that is also influencing us and is influenced by us. So I'm going to check in with the stream here real quick and make sure that it's looking good and everything is healthy. It looks good. So let us know how you're feeling in the chat. If you feel called to share, if you are catching this on the replay on all of the platforms. I didn't get a chance to put the Friday transmission and the astrology report up on BitChute. It just did not happen in terms of converting the file to something I could upload to BitChute before I left town. So, but this one will be up for sure. So if that's the platform that you prefer, just know that it's going to be up. So if you are new here and you do find value in this content, you can consider subscribing so you know when I have content uploaded or when I'm streaming live, it'll notify you. And of course, if you do have a subscription to this channel and you value this content, when you like it, when you share, when you comment, it all has an impact on these channels growing and reaching a wider audience. And I have a lot of clients and monthly subscribers and people who are becoming part of this Starseed Fellowship really strongly that found me through the algorithm of the video platform. So it does actually make a difference. And if you found me that way, there's a good chance that other people can find their way to us as well. So let's get into the space weather. I just want to check in with this because there were some really big earthquakes over the weekend. There were two between the 6 and 7 magnitude when it comes in Taiwan. That was pretty substantial. And then we had the big one in Mexico that was between a 7 and 8 magnitude on the Pacific side of Mexico. And geez. And we're going to talk about our friend, the Schumann. It finally came back in terms of, well, the Schumann never went anywhere, right? The electromagnetic frequency that is the result of our magnetosphere did not go anywhere. It was always there, but the mechanisms to measure it definitely were offline for about 8 days, it sounds like. Just before that 10 days of darkness. And one of the things that I had said last week, if I remember correctly, is that I thought that it was a blessing, even if it was something that was trying to be covered up or keep us from interacting with this information, because now many people are starting to get wise to the shifts and the changes and their own sensitivity to the actual reverberations of the world around us. And when we have a direct relationship with that, there is so much empowerment, right? We don't rely on anyone else, any other institution or structure to, be the conduit or the middleman, right? I mean, that's essentially what the Catholic Church was attempting to do with the religion of Christ and Mary Magdalene, was to be like, you got to come through us, right? We're the only ones that can interpret it. And it doesn't matter if it's religion or science or technology or news, journalism, whatever, storytelling. The idea here is that even if there was meant to be a covering up of something over this amount of time, it really was a good opportunity to give ourselves the chance to test our sensitivity. What do we feel, right? I can tell you that right as I was about to start preparing for this broadcast, I stepped out of the booth and I got a strong tone, really strong tone in my left ear. It was so loud that all I could do was stop and just kind of sing or hum along with it. So I'm curious if anybody else felt that this morning as well. It was really, really substantial. So anyway, the Schumann came back. We can see on the 18th, it amplified in a really consistent pattern up to about 36. The 19th, which was yesterday, Monday, there was certainly still some reverberation. There was still some spikes in amplitude, not nearly as much. And then it kind of flatlined a little bit. And then even this morning, there was a little bit of amplification. So when I share this with you, I'm going to show you here what else was going along with that, right? So we see the corresponding changes in the quality of the electromagnetic frequency or the wavelength, and you can see that it was going up in correspondence to the amplification, as we've talked about. Same thing with here yesterday on Monday. Now, what I think is interesting is that usually it's a very sudden drop in the frequency itself when we have these large spikes, but it seems very gradual, right? It was significant, but it was a gentle kind of slope, and then a gentle sloping back up, and then there was some variety here. But even here, which actually is, if you look here, 1800 Universal Time is actually when the Mexico earthquake registered. It was around right here when it all went flatlined, and same thing with the quality. But what you can see is that it reached peak frequency also around that time. And there was some variety here in terms of its dropping and coming back up, right? Just imagine a pitch dropping and coming back up and then dropping, but still trending towards a higher frequency, right? More wavelengths per second, a higher pitch. And then the earthquake happened, and it pretty much stayed up here. So these are also interesting connections that I've been making. And I'm sure you're making them too. And the frequency continues to trend up towards between 8 and 9 hertz, where the Schumann resonance, for as long as we've been measuring it, has been down between 7 and 8 hertz. And so when we talk about the frequency rising, it is the literal frequency of the magnetic field that is trending towards a higher pitch or a higher frequency. So what it feels like is that these earthquakes, regardless if you think that they're artificially generated, so you're going to find channels on social media that attribute every single thing like this to that. And I've actually heard some researchers talk about how they don't actually think there's any natural phenomenon anymore. Like all storms, all seismic activity apparently is created through these technological means. And so you'll find that, but also on the other end of it is a complete, bypassing of any of this potential, right? That some of this is being created in terms of superheating the atmosphere, right? So wherever you find yourself, what it does seem like is that those events really, especially the big one in Mexico, as we're going to see, really did actually settle something. There was a lot of disturbance in the Schumann before that happened, and then the quake happened and it went back to a flat line. And so there was a lot of pressure released, I think, from this that allowed for the frequency of the field to stay really high, which I think is really interesting. So I'm glad the Schumann is back. I'm also glad it was dark for a while and that we could just kind of tune into ourselves about the Schumann instead of relying on what other people are telling us about it. And I'm kind of glad that I don't understand all of the facets quite yet, because I've been learning about it as I go along, because it really does help me fine tune instead of just taking someone else's words at face value without knowing the research. I think that, and we all could use a dose of this, and we have been, right? This is something I feel like many of us have been practicing for a long time. So that's the Schumann back. This is a really interesting picture. This is an Aurora explosion over Norway. Again, this was yesterday. There was this huge explosion. If you go to spaceweather.com, you'll see the picture and the interviews about it, because there was somebody taking a group on a tour and it just went poof, and people were really taken aback, right? They were laughing, they were scared, they were like, what is that? They were surprised, but it was pretty strong. Now, there's something very interesting about the equinox time of year that is actually a measured scientific phenomenon called the Russell-McPhellen effect. And if you go to spaceweather.com, actually, you'll and on their homepage, you'll get a link to the actual paper. I haven't read the paper yet, so I'm not going to speak on exactly what the mechanism is. But what I do know is that during equinox time, there are cracks in the magnetic field of the planet. So you get more of these auroras with less intense space weather than normal. So also know that there's going to be more charged plasma, more solar wind getting through the magnetic field or the magnetosphere charging the ionosphere during equinox time, and that has an impact on weather and the global electric circuit, and that has an impact on seismic activity. So that just is like some cool eye candy, but it does represent that effect that is actually measured around this time, the equinox time. So speaking of space weather, I want to show you just the sun right now. Oops. Here we go. Sorry about that. Let's see. There is... Oh, it doesn't want to load apparently. Let's see if it does it now. Of course not. So anyway, here is the picture of the star anyway. Our star, and this coronal hole is coming out of view. We were getting the solar wind from this. Here's a new one coming into view as well, and we'll be getting more solar wind from this. There are flares. There was just a big one actually this morning. Well, big, like an M-class flare, I think, on one of the sunspots coming into view, but for the most part it's been not too heavy and intense. But there have been those heavy and intense earthquakes and those cracks in the magnetic field. So you can see that the geomagnetic disturbance has been high as far as how high the index goes before it's actually starting to register as disturbed. So there has been some disturbance, but it hasn't taken the disturbance level to the yellow quite yet over the weekend. So, but people are reporting all kinds of different experiences. I know definitely it was a mixed bag, especially Sunday into Monday. There was a lot of, which was 18th into 19th, there was a lot of agitation I could feel within me. I could feel a lot of stirring emotionally, and it was in that kind of, it was angry and it was short-tempered, and I think a lot of it probably had to do as well with the moon coming into, late Gemini into Cancer, but there was definitely some build up there. And of course, then Monday was that big earthquake in Mexico. So maybe that was part of it as well. So I want to actually show you a graphic of here, I'll move myself out of the way. I want to show you a graphic of this just to get an idea. So these are the big ones over the course of just the last week. But specifically, the 17th and 18th with Taiwan. The 19th, which was Monday, yesterday, is this big one in Mexico. And if you were to click on it, it gives you the general area of the earthquake. And one of the things I noticed, it says the Colima, Michoacan border region, but there's also another region that it's called, and it's called Aquila. Right? Aquila, Mexico. And for all the astro people out there, Aquila is the constellation of the eagle. And the eagle is the carrier of the thunderbolt of Zeus, right? Carries it on its back. So I want to go over a little bit of the astrology related to Aquila, because I just think it's really interesting that we have this region of Mexico. So it's on the Pacific side, kind of near Guadalajara, and they had a tsunami warning, but there was no tsunami, but it was a pretty shallow earthquake. It was only about 15 kilometers deep, and it was pretty close to the shoreline. I can't tell if it was in the ocean or not, but it was very close. So Aquila, it immediately caught my attention. Number one, because my ascendant is right on this fixed star, Terra Z, right on the back of Aquila. But another fixed star that is very prominent is Altair, which is at 2 degrees Aquarius. And if you are familiar with the Sabian symbols, you know that that is an unexpected storm, is 2 degrees Aquarius. So Altair is one of the main stars in the Aquila constellation. So I thought it'd be worth it just to share a little bit of information about Aquila in terms of the star itself, right? It's a pale yellow star. It's in the neck of the constellation of Aquila, and that star in particular is very bold, it's confident, it's unyielding, it's ambitious, and great and sudden but ephemeral wealth. This is all fixed star astrology, ancient astrology, and a position of command makes its natives guilty of bloodshed and gives danger from reptiles. Oh, that's interesting. It is the nature of Mars and Jupiter. So Mars is something that you should put a pin in right now. When we get to the astrology, it will come back around, because Mars is the agent of the tower, and oftentimes it is these tower moments that are these bolts of lightning that seemingly come out of nowhere. You can't predict where exactly, but we can kind of get an idea of how we're going to respond to those situations, and we also know what are the general conditions that may create something like this. Yeah, the flying eagle has a Mars character with a blend of Mercury and Jupiter. It's good for advancement of military. And the constellation of Aquila rules the U.S. space exploration, and then things like bombs and missiles, right? Because the idea here is that Aquila carried the weapon of Zeus or Jupiter. So I didn't even plan on talking about this, but I just thought it was really interesting when I started looking at where this earthquake happened in Mexico. And it does feel like in some ways that there is now a homeostasis, or it released a lot of energy somehow. And it doesn't mean that there wasn't damage, right? Of course, there was probably damage in that situation. No doubt that there was, but there's also to consider that there is a natural flow to this, even if there are destructive elements to the tower we've built up. And of course, Pluto in Capricorn has been, kind of setting the pace for all of this for a really, really long time in terms of the last, since 2008, since Pluto came into Capricorn. So what's going to be interesting is when Pluto comes into Aquarius. And so Pluto has actually been moving through this constellation and will continue to do so for years to come. So it came into this constellation roughly about 2019, I would say, because the zodiac where this constellation currently starts is roughly about 19 to 20 degrees Capricorn. So we know that Saturn and Pluto came together at 23 degrees Capricorn in January of 2020 in this constellation itself, right? And Saturn is still Saturn has moved beyond Aquila at this point, but Pluto is here for a long time. So, of course, we also know that Pluto is sitting on the natal Pluto of the United States signing of the Declaration of Independence. So we also know there's a Pluto return factor and has been for months now, but this is just a whole new dimension that opened up that I wanted to share with everybody. So, thank you for indulging me, and I hope that, whatever this brought out for you, I'm really curious as well. So I'm going to bring up the reading here to share with you, and we'll get into this. So one of the first things you may notice here is that the Princess of Swords now is in this reading. And if you remember, she was also in the reading last week as well for the Starseed Ministry on the other side, right, of the effect. So I'm going to read some comments here in the chat. Barb says, it's great to see you again. Yes, I agree. I'm glad to see you too. Didn't sleep at all Sunday night. Lots of internal readjustment and perhaps what was going on in London. Who knows? Sunday into Monday was an intense build-up. Need to decompress, integrate big time. Yeah, I definitely am feeling the need to decompress big time. I'm definitely feeling it too. Yeah, and Sunday to Monday, it was really rough sleep. It was really agitated, and I drank a little bit of wine on Sunday. We were playing cards and doing family time, and alcohol is what it is, right? And sometimes it can be the right remedy when you need it, and other times it just lowers your ability to, boundary yourself to some of these more base types of experiences. And so I was way more impacted by that intense buildup, and I could feel it in me. I could see it in the way that I was acting, in the way that I was just like sneering at everybody. So, but I even noticed it like right in that moment too. So that was really helpful. But to feel that and to know that that was like building and building and building, and then the release of it is just really interesting. Megan says, "Hi there, hello there. I'm so glad to see you. Slipping in late. It's rough night of not sleeping. Happy to be here though. Yeah, it's I didn't take any of my pure sleep all weekend, and so I definitely felt the impact of that as well, because I took it last night and I was like, geez, thank you. I slept like 12 hours because I was just so exhausted. And, as much as I love the family outings, it's quite an endeavor. It is a caravan of multiple families, multiple campers, organizing ourselves, all the dynamics, all mixed together with everyone. But the amount of healing that has been happening in these trips has been astounding and really uncomfortable in many ways. But this definitely felt like, yes, it was the last trip of the season. And it was one of those things where I'm like, I'm really glad that this is over. And also being very grateful for all of like the memories and all of the positive and powerful and just authentic experiences throughout the summer that we've all gotten to have together. So, and being able to be in two places at once like that, I think is just such a blessing. And I'm so grateful I'm at a point where I can experience things like that. So, I know that it's been a rough weekend, and there was a lot of buildup of energy. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about the 24th is that, number one, Barb, definitely, I don't want to speak for you and your research, but you definitely put the time in to establish if that German MP about the 24th was legit. And, it wasn't, right? It was a total psyop. And I just listened to Alex, the first 45 minutes of his Friday webinar, and there was the first question out the gate about the 24th. And that's what he said too. And I think that's what we talked about as well, that it just felt like there was something off about it. But I really appreciate the commitment to actually getting to the bottom of it. Such a Scorpio thing. And being an eighth house, right? To really establish like what is it, right? And it turned out it was a slice and dice, right? It was a total psyop. It was a cut and paste in order to elicit a response. And that certainly was what Alex was saying on Friday. He's like, my humble opinion is the psyop, and it's just meant to, funnel our energy into that specific date, which does have relevance, right? Venus opposite Neptune on that day, that Virgo Pisces opposition, certainly the new moon in Libra on the very next day of the 25th. This is a really potent time, and there's so few moves left for them on the board, and that's one of them. So, you learn by doing, and sometimes you do and you do and you do until you realize, okay, right, this is the process of establishing, is this something worth giving my energy to or not? And I think we're just getting so wise to it. The other thing too is that as we transition into fourth density physically, which many of us, especially in the Reiki healing attunement, boy, we're beyond the home stretch. We have rounded third, and we are about to slide into home base, right? Like any minute, right? The 21 days is coming up tomorrow, actually. So it's been a really difficult transition in the body, in the feels. It's just been right in front of our faces because the people in this group have committed and intended to establish a healing template within their own system that has brought all of the toxicity, impurity, all of the karmic residue, all of it right up to the surface to be seen so clearly that you can't avoid it anymore. And it has been rough. It has been very, very rough. And I am so proud of all of us, to be perfectly honest. I feel like that as we've gone along, it's been pretty amazing. And I've been right with them the whole time, right? If you're not participating, I'm receiving the attunement energetically as I am channeling the master attunement and offering it as well. And it has been something else. So there has been just some profound moments coming out of that. And this is part of the transition, right? Our bodies and our personalities, right? Our subjective personalities in this reality are catching up to the fact that we're already fully transitioned into this next density of experience. And so when we go into this reading, we're going to see how there's been kind of a flip in a lot of ways, but that also comes with its need to balance it out or to be able to juggle the change. And the change may not feel nearly as flowing and harmonious as the Two of Discs in this card represents, but this is about learning how to juggle, right? And when you learn how to juggle, then it does feel like that, even though you may be juggling 9 chainsaws or, 5 flaming torches, whatever it is, or just 3 juggling balls, whatever it is that you're juggling. It's your ability to find that flow that allows us to really adjust and be in the harmony of it, right? To resonate with it harmoniously. But like I said, it might be that crack of lightning. So if you look at the thumbnail that I picked up from Astronomy Photo of the Day. It's linked in the description box below, but that is a recent picture and the actual cityscape is Barcelona. And I had an experience in Barcelona in 2019. It was October. It was kind of the last stop on our trip. And we've been there for about 7 weeks. And then we were going to get on a boat and do that thing, the med cruise. But we had this Airbnb in Barcelona for a couple days, so getting the travel day was a little dicey. We had to really figure some things out on the ground, but we got there, but we hadn't really eaten, and so we went back out to be like, okay, let's go find some food. And all of a sudden, it just is a monsoon, right? Because Barcelona is on the Mediterranean, and October, you're getting into the rainy season. So it's just dumping, right? And we're like, screw it, let's go. Anyway, there are other people out and they just had their umbrellas because this was no thing for the people that lived there. So we're walking and I was like, it's warm, it's tropical, we might be wet, but let's go. We need to find food. And as we're walking, there was a bolt of lightning that came down. It had to have been, like 100 feet from us. It was not, maybe 100 yards, maybe, which is still really, really close. Like we were on the sidewalk and hit the other side of the street and I felt it in my entire body. And I instinctually I grabbed Seth and I physically turned this, 180-pound man, physically turned his body around and I said, pushed him back towards the apartment. I was like, nope, we're going home. And it was out of instinct. Like I didn't think it. I didn't plan it. It scared me so much that I just was like, no, we are reorienting ourselves. Off we go. And there is something I feel like that is really, really important about that experience that I'm going to have to bring into my reality. And, there is a lot of fragmented energy in this reading, as we're going to see, but there's also a lot of realization of our own abundance and a sense of our own integrity that is going to allow us to manage ourselves within a field of fragmented energy or people in our lives, or even just our own fragmented masculine, right, of the King of Roses being reversed here. So let's go through this piece by piece. So again, the Princess of Swords, we saw her last week as our the end of our cause and effect relationship. Now she is exactly where she needs to be. She's in that causal position, right? So we're coming out of this position into this moment that is an Ace of Swords that's reversed and then the Nine of Cups that's upright. And, these are how these cards come out. They literally pop out of the deck like this. I don't even draw cards. I literally shuffle them and they come out. And they come out in the positions and in the orientation that they're meant to. So this Princess of Swords, as we talked about. So this is the Venus of the air. And look, you can see that there is this earth element that's almost really trying to shield or protect oneself from the onslaught of the winds, right? Of the spirit, of the intellect. And so there is this warrior kind of Athena energy with the Princess of Swords, which Pallas Athena is in Cancer right now. And this is about strategy. This is about wisdom. This is about what are you going to do with your chess pieces? How are you going to put things on the board? But this in particular also suggests that there is these air and earth are not very easily integrated. It's much more of a quincunx type of energy. And this is why it seems in some ways it seems like they don't fit, right? I mean, it does seem like the princess, right, which is the Venus element, and the earth element is being is fending something off, which is, like I said, the spirit, the winds, the rush of the air, the movement of the intellect. And there's a lot of rigor, but there's a lot of curiosity here. And you can see even her pedestal is kind of up in the air. And so Venus also rules Libra, right? This is the season we're coming into, right? This is the part of the September equinox. And so there's something about this part of ourselves, Venus, who's in Virgo right now, which I think is interesting juxtaposition, actually, because it is a sign that is an earth sign ruled by Mercury, an air, usually an air planet, right? Rules Gemini. So there's something here about we've already kind of worked with and maybe even felt the disconnect or the inconjunct nature of the material comfort, our relationships, the security, the balance, the harmony, all these Venusian qualities. And there's an innocence here, right? Kind of the maiden of the feminine energy with something that doesn't seemingly fit, which is the mind and the intellect. But I think that there has been somewhat of a successful, there's something to be cognized or realized through our senses about the way that we conceptualize things. So let me read some of my notes actually in terms of this. So one of the things that I've noticed is that in terms of the Kabbalah or the Tree of Life, this card in particular represents Malkuth, and that's the very bottom of the Tree of Life. And so, it does, the energy in the Kabbalah is meant to, and many people feel like this is the inverted representation, is the bottom of the chart, right? Or the bottom of the tree. It's bringing it down, bringing the intellect down into material reality. So there is a sense of almost seriousness and rigorousness that is required for this. Once we get past the inner fear and insecurity about ourselves, our value, and our worth, those things that Venus rules in Taurus, there is also and our own intellect, there's also an incredible amount of generosity and kindness that goes along with this, right? It's very discriminating, but at the same time, it's very courageous, careful, right? Like I said, there's a sense of responsibility here and strategy. I get a strong Athena vibe from this card of a strategy, but it's not something that was easily brought together. It was something that took some effort, I think, and a curiousness or a curiosity and discernment in order to really be able to embrace this energy without getting into kind of like the place where I felt on Sunday to Monday, which is, the other side of the Princess of Swords can be really cruel and kind of bitchy, right? Like just cutting people down for no reason. And because she can, right? She can cut the legs out from under you. And part of that is a defense mechanism, just like you see here. But I feel like there was more of a realization of this in our causal factor. So where does this lead us? Well, number one, I think this is a good place to start, is the central heart of the moment came in twofold, right? Where at the top of things, there is an abundance. Nine of Cups is a great card. I mean, happiness is what we all want and we all want to pursue, right? That's what our Constitution provides for, does it not? Perfect harmony and fulfillment in any emotional matter, right? There's love, there's trust, there's optimism, there's a sense of contentment and abundance. This is Jupiter in Pisces. And this is the part of the Kabbalah that is right above Malkuth. It is the place of culmination before the materialization or the crystallization into material form. This is a pretty favorable card. So there's a sense here of emotional fulfillment, right? And abundance and trust and real love. Not kind of the Four of Cups where it's more luxurious, but you see that you got all this other, the bottom's going to drop out into disappointment. We have really come to this place through a sense of true connection with each other and going through the trials together, which is, I think, a great position for this. Now, the Ace of Swords is very interesting considering that we did have this Princess of Swords and it's reversed. And I think this is where we can put the intellectual energy that has been maybe, kind of messing with us or not even being part of the equation at all. Maybe we've been ruled by our emotions a little bit too much in previous weeks or months or years or lifetimes. And if we need a direction, and Mars in Gemini, really, we need a direction that is actually allows us to express our assertion, right? To be assertive, but also to do it in a way that is healthy, a healthy masculine expression, not one that is either turned inward or where we are acting on as if there are only two choices here and we're picking our side and that's what we are fighting for. And I'm not saying that that's in itself a bad thing. This reading is suggesting that if we want to put that new idea, see, I feel like, again, we've kind of come to a new awareness and we realize that, but we want to maybe direct it towards at the root where this fragmented energy is coming from. So the Ace of Swords in general is the seed of intellectual power, unstructured, primary energy, right? It hasn't come into, and it hasn't met its objective or its object yet. So there's an undifferentiated unity. It's just the seed point, a first thought, an impulse, a new view of things. It allows our mind to work rather than follow our emotions only. Again, the Princess of Swords, I think, was really a big part of this. Now, in its reversal, our vision could be clouded. There's a false start. There's intellectual dissatisfaction, possibly even a refusal to evolve. I feel like that this energy of the Ace of Swords, if we're having those issues, is really meant to be directed at the root of our own energetic insecurity, perhaps what is happening at our in our subconscious level, something that is happening within our own field as well. And that's the King of Roses, also reversed, right? Now, this is somebody, either us, a part of ourselves, someone in our life, someone in the public view that represents this for us. But the disruption in the relationship with this male energy seems to be at the root. And this is where I feel like we can really address this new intellectual impulse rather than get caught up in kind of the clouded vision, right? Because it can be overwhelming to have this card reversed like this because there is a lot of fragmented, disrupted energy, and with the male energy in particular. So it's important not to get swept away, which Neptune in Pisces has really been doing. It's time to let go of the attachment, whatever it is, and create a truly caring relationship with yourself, first and foremost. But then this will, ripple out to the relationship with the masculine, to the men in your life, to some sort of just masculine in general. Now, when there's also a reversal, it's important to realize that we have to take control of our own perception of ourselves and our life, right? And so there may be a misguided leader, an emotionally volatile man in our life, or the male energy in general, especially when it comes to the emotional aspect. The King of Roses is very much like the King of Cups. So there may be that energy at the root of our experience that we have to really start thinking differently about, okay? Otherwise, we are unwilling to face that reality, and some of that is happening. And that may be someone in our life who is unwilling to face their own reality that has been having a deep emotional or, energetic impact on us. So there's a lot of ways that they can go about. But what I do see is that this where the energy can really, mental energy may very well could be directed. And you're going to see we'll get the flexibility that's needed, this sense of shape-shifting, or the ability to really stand in someone else's position, is where compassion really comes from. And if the King of Roses is anything, is very compassionate and passionate at the same time. So whatever this disruption is, I think this is a great outlet intellectually for us, especially as a new idea is starting to come forward, without letting go of our attention that's focused on everything that we have, the Nine of Cups, okay? And when we look at the Six of Scrolls, the Sands of Time, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory that we got to roll up our sleeves. We have a limited amount of time. There's a limited amount of grains of sand in the hourglass. It's coming to an end. The sun is setting. All of these things that are like, it's time to get, to keep going. You're right. We can't stop now necessarily. And time is of the essence. And this is not to be like, oh, we have to get going or we're going to lose or whatever. It's more about focus and effort are still required, so we have to kind of roll up our sleeves and get to it. And it's very easy for worry to steer us away from what we are really wanting to do and what we've been planning to do, probably over lifetimes, certainly this lifetime. And there are a lot of plans in here, but this is the one that this person has in hand and is rolling up the sleeves and looking at the hourglass. It's like, okay, this is... We're at like I said, we're sliding into home base on the Reiki healing attunement. The equinox is coming. And the equinox is kind of that moment where you turn the hourglass. It empties and it turns, and then so it is in that horizontal position, and then you turn it, and that's the new moon, right? A new day reveals everything changed, right? You turn the hourglass, it's a whole new cycle. We know that there's not a lot of time left, and again, there are so many, and this, when you realize your infinite nature, this is not a thing, right? This is not something to freak you out, but there are others that will be and are freaked out by nothing can stop what's coming, because this is about, natural cycles, okay, of change. So, and I mean, geez, it doesn't get any more transparent than that. The Two of Discs. This is the change. The Ouroboros, the infinity symbol, right? The hourglass, and then it gets turned, right? The yin and the yang. I mean, it's all about balance, harmonious change. It's the natural balance of gain and loss. And we are still a part of nature. And we have to accept the natural flow of change, especially if we have been part of the imbalance or have been stagnant as a result of hiding our heads in the sand or not wanting to deal with things. It's important to handle this with care and consideration, right? This is why juggling takes a lot of practice, because you are forming new neural pathways. And if you just come bum rushing, just rushing into it and be like, hey, I can juggle or whatever, it's not gonna go so well. But again, the fragmented energy is going to pull us into the worry and to a sense of doom, maybe, or a sense of it may, if we don't do something now, it's too late. And it's more like, don't let that fragmented energy pull you away from your goal in this particular cycle, whatever it is, because change is going to come. That's just all there is to it. And so you can be part of the process and embrace this, or, feed into the fragmentation. It's not going to matter, because this is still happening regardless. It just depends on how you want to, or anyone else wants to approach it. But it's like a surrounding of fragmentation in many ways, that either from within ourselves, I think a lot of that is the case. Everybody has to deal with the masculine being confronted by the return of Quetzalcoatl. Everybody, right? Everybody is dealing with that. So in their own way, based on their own journey, their own soul's blueprint. And we could really stand to, maybe be willing to shapeshift a little bit, put ourselves in other people's positions so we can really understand them. This octopus, a lot of times, will be about how shapeshifting camouflages you and makes you resilient and flexible. And I would say, obviously, with the willow involved with that, the Two of Forces, right? There's a lot of fresh energy in this reading, along with the Nine of Cups, which is a culmination. But then you have Two of Discs, Two of Forces, you have the One of Forces up here, the Akashic Field. There is the Six of Scrolls, which means intellectually we've made it pretty far. We're at a moment of real synthesis and staying on task with again, that's a very material thing, the Sands of Time. And again, the Princess of Swords. I mean, the onslaught of the ideas, the concepts, the knowledge, the spirit coming in, and now learning the strategy of how to actually address that. That's part of, I think, the Six of Scrolls. But otherwise, lots of new energy. Two of Forces, the Willow. Again, this is about having deep, powerful roots that draw the waters of your soul into who you are now to sustain you. And the willow kind of shapeshifts in the breeze in some ways. I think that's very interesting. And then the octopus is it almost functions like a willow underground, if you really think about it. Just the way that it moves within the medium of water, and the willow moves within the medium of the air, and they're resilient and flexible. I mean, if you've ever seen an octopus squeeze itself through a tiny hole, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Plus the fact that their skin color changes to reflect their inner experience as well. So and the camouflaging and shape-shifting. But there's something I'm getting really strongly about being able to actually put yourself in other people's positions energetically, not to necessarily release your own boundaries. That's not what I'm saying here. This is about, being able to really experience it for yourself so that you can have compassion. And that also allows you to be resilient as well, instead of holding this position really firm. The thing that's firm is the root system of this willow, right? That is the thing that is firm, and that is Cancer, right? The moon in Cancer, and the fourth house is the root system, right? So the root system is strong, but what is the personality is able to move and bend and flex with the change in environment, even if it's drastic, okay? Now, there doesn't seem to be drastic energy in this reading. What it seems to be is fragmented energy in the reading. So let me start here, actually. The One of Forces is the Akashic Field. Doesn't that look just like that the Aurora explosion that we saw, right? The Northern Lights. The idea that the field has every possibility, every potential, everything that has happened and ever will happen is in the Akashic Field. It is our own soul's record. And the soul of humanity, the soul of our solar system, the soul of the galaxy, it's all here. So when it is reversed like this, it does suggest, again, fragmented and agitated energy around you. And you may be going through a crisis. You may be on the other end of grief or hostility. Wow, that's not hard to imagine right now at a global level. Worry and panic are splitting energy. It's really important that we calm down, we rein in our emotional intensity, because otherwise we are tuned into that station, and that's the frequency we're going to start attracting. So the Akashic Field is filled with potential solutions, infinite potential solutions. So you may need to take a step back in order to get perspective. The other thing too is the elk is a hugely powerful creature to stand. They're huge. I mean, if you've ever seen one up close or in person, they are massive. They are so much taller than I am, that's for sure. And this is about literally standing tall, maintain your dignity. But when you actually are standing, not like that military upright, because that closes those channels in the back of your shoulders. But when you stand tall, the energy can move through your body unimpeded, right? This is what, the dis-ease comes from when there are energy pockets that are either stagnant, they're blocked, or they're moving too quickly. It's out of balance. And so this, again, is about standing tall, maintaining your dignity. And this is what Six of Scrolls, he's definitely standing tall. He's maintaining his dignity. He is completely focused on, it's time to get to business. Time is of the essence. And again, the elk, very physical, material energy too. Stand tall and maintain your dignity no matter what, because the energy around you is likely very agitated, worried, and it's easy to get pulled into it. It's a practice, right? It's not like you just figure it out one day and you never do it again. We have to practice it. And the more that we are adjusting to fourth density, the more that we're experiencing the energetic way more in our material life than we have before. And that means our ability to maintain ourselves in the face of that has to get stepped up as well. But I do get the sense that we've actually come to a point of wow, how abundant emotionally, how much happiness is really available to us as well. And there may need to be a flipping of perspective. And the one of forces reversed really suggests that. If you're really struggling to get out of the fragmented and agitated energy, and you're really worried, or something is really pulling you back in, right? You have the elk, which is standing in your dignity, and you're, standing tall, making sure the energy is moving through your body strongly and unimpeded, right? And then here you go, that heart chakra, that toroidal field around us, but also too, taking that step back in order to get a new perspective will really help with this as well. Right? Strong foundation, a sense of resiliency and flexibility, even with yourself, right? As you journey into a new way of conceptualizing the masculine at the root of who you are. The masculine in your life is your dad, it's your spouse, it is your, boyfriend, it is, any kind of man in your life, or your role as this King of Roses as well, to realize a change coming and to use our intellect for what it's for, which is really a true mental metamorphosis where Mars in Gemini is at today. So that's the reading for today as well, my friends. So let's look at first I'm going to take the reading out of there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the chart formatted for you and all set up, and then we will transition to the astrology. So yeah, it was a pretty intense weekend, and the hits keep on coming, my friends. That is for sure. So the sun is in the last couple degrees of Virgo, right? This is where there is the power of the will, right? This is the moment of birth, basically, right? This is where, you're coming into the last degrees of the labor to truly reach your, to realize your full potential as an individual, right? Virgo is service to others, right? Pretty well, I would say that that's a pretty generalized and abstract way of looking at it, but remember that it's about the individual and their works, their labors, and how it perfects your form, how it purifies you, how it makes you a better person, how you become the vessel that allows for the potential of the next cycle and new growth to be released from you. So the sun here, we're reaching that saturation moment here. We've been very patient, and now that energy is really starting to bear down And we're about to reach the moment of harvest, which is no turning back, right? I mean, that is the flipping of the wheel. That is the flipping of the script. That is the equinox moment. And that is the turning of the hourglass at 0 degrees Libra. And it happens, same thing in the spring. It's just a different energy that is coming into play here. So I want to check in with the stream real quick. Aquila, fascinating with the eagle as the U.S. symbol and some kind of possible increased military buildup in Ukraine or elsewhere. And I would definitely say yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And what I also, again, the release of the energy with that huge quake near this area of Mexico and all of the things that are associated with it is just very interesting to me. Now, where was I? Oh, and Uranus, right? Venus in a trine to Uranus today. And this is actually a great segue because I feel like there's a lot of that Uranian energy with these quakes because of Uranus in Taurus and in retrograde especially, right? That kinetic energy under the surface, under the ocean, right? That is moving things around so that later in Uranus, when it goes direct again and comes back into this degree, we're going to see that new potential coming out of that spontaneous emergence right now. But there are things definitely moving around under the surface. And Venus in Virgo, we've talked about this before, that swimming race, but now it's very much in the that sands of time, that's what it felt like to me, like eye on the prize in our relationships, in what is harmonious, in what is valuable, what is beautiful in terms of what we are offering to the world, whatever it is in Virgo for us. This is a very stable Venus trine Uranus, and like a general read of Venus trine Uranus, like as a transit, is that you're trying new things, right? You're feeling inspired to change it up in your relationships. Maybe if you're this is, like I said, it's kind of mundane, but at the same time, this is where you may find a secret Easter egg somewhere that's just like, okay, eye on the prize, or also with that reading, the idea that the kinetic energy or the fragmentation with Uranus around you is potentially pulling you off, but Venus in Virgo is very focused on where she's going. And Venus can be in our bodies, Venus can be in our resources, Venus can be in our relationships and how they physically feel, right? Is it comfortable? Is it balanced? Is it harmonious? Is it beautiful? Eye on the prize, right? Eye on the prize. This is a very stable, and like I said, it might be a new direction that we hadn't seen before in this race. And it's not even a race, right? It's more of a race to get to a place for all of us, right? We're all working individually to make things better for all of us, not just ourselves. And Venus is, again, rules the areas of resource and value and balance and harmony. So I feel like, again, eye on the prize here, and in a way that doesn't get distracted or pulled off, strangely enough, with Uranus. And I think that's as long as we are identifying that. And Venus was in a square to Mars, and I think we realized where that where the tension with the masculine and feminine in our own lives really was based on that, in terms of, I gotta say this, or I have to express myself in this way, I gotta know what's happening, or I need to act on the process of getting to the bottom of things, which has been really great. And then Venus in Virgo, that is like patience, right? To allow the process to grow naturally, allow the fruit to mature, to ripen. And that, I feel like that square really tested us, but at the same time brought so many of the qualities in both the masculine and feminine out, because we had to lean into the fact that it wasn't just one or the other, but those things together were intellect and intuition, right? So again, this is showing that place where Mars can really put that energy, whereas Venus can be almost secure in the abundance that is sure to come as a result of our patience and our commitment to this process. So the trine to Uranus that was very first thing this morning, right? Midnight pretty much, I think is, again, maybe something new came about, maybe a new realization, maybe we just got that much more secure in where we're going despite the changes that are happening in the material level with Uranus and Taurus. Let's see here. Let me bring up my notes here just to kind of give the play-by-play for today. So the moon moves into Leo today, right? So it finishes her transit in Cancer. She was already opposite Pluto, so that Procyon story also came up really strong. Lilith was crossing Sirius, was conjunct the moon, actually, as they were conjunct the star Sirius, as the queen was, having her, funeral, basically. And we talked about that on Friday, too, that seems pretty scheduled as far as I can tell. But the moon moving through Cancer is going to be in a trine to Neptune, opposite to Pluto, but then is in a sextile to the sun, actually. And this is an opportunity to... If we can kind of return to that primal nature within ourselves of love and connection and true relationship with life itself, right? And move beyond the outer shell that we all seem to have and get down to the essence of life, that root system of the willow, for instance, then I think there's a opportunity to really harness the energy of the sun in late Virgo, which is... Wow, it is a really strong seizing of power in a catabolic moment. So there's another reference in some ways to this energy that is really charged and very kinetic in some ways, and also at any moment can be triggered, it seems like. And in that moment will be where we identify with our ability to kind of seize the power in our own lives, our own identity, and our own voice. And this moon in Cancer, especially after it just came off of an opposition with Pluto, and this whole Procyon story is brought back up to the surface. What did we learn, right? What have we learned as starseeds through this experience of soul memory, of our participation in this story of Procyon? I think that's going to be a big part of it. So if you didn't really learn anything and you're carrying the resonance of those aspects that have to do with the control mechanism, right? Or the jailers or the wardens of that situation, right? Forcing them underground in many ways and keeping them prisoner. Perhaps this is not going to work so well, or you may find yourself attempting to seize power when it's kind of like sputter out. So, but for those of us who are Procyon starseeds and we are aware of this soul memory and we want to utilize it as part of our soul's growth and evolution towards our awakening or ascension, right? Towards evolving at a soul level. I think this moon sextile sun is really great. And then the moon will come into Leo and it'll trine Mercury in Libra. And you also see that Lilith is in an aspect with the moon's node. So Lilith, as the lunar apogee, is in a trine to the south node. It is in a sextile to the north node, right? Braving the storm. This is the energy of our soul's current trajectory in terms of evolving, is to brave the storm, to, pop our collar, put our hat on, and just go for it, right? And what's interesting is Venus does rule Taurus. And so we look at Venus as really, truly the ruler of our soul's trajectory right now. And it just goes back to that patience, right? Eye on the prize. resoluteness, a sense of maturing, a sense of ripening, a sense of feeling it within ourselves, right? And in our own worth to put that energy into ourselves of maturing or coming to fruition. So, but there is this need to really face the elements of the objective material reality when we come into it. And Lilith here is still conjunct, exactly conjunct Sirius when she's making this connection to the North Node in a sextile. So there's something really deeply primal and powerful about our soul's root that is really, I think, strongly influencing and harmonizing with this direction, right? When we are connected to that infinite space of our soul's root, we can face anything, right? Because we know that the material process of harmonious change is not a reflection of our soul and our own spirit. We connect to that, and life, right? Life continues regardless of what form it is taking. And this seems to also be a really powerful connection for all of us today. So the moon, like I said, the moon will move into Leo by the end of today. Let's move forward here and see where it takes us. And that Saturn-Uranus square is starting to come into effect. It's not exact, but it's close enough that it is going to start, firing off thunderbolts. Uranus and Saturn square is so much of the experience of the tower coming down, because these things are not... They are against each other. And what is the bridge? It's Chiron, right? Chiron that is in a square to Lilith. Chiron that just came off a sextile to Mars over the weekend, right? We saw that opportunity to really heal those wounds about what we are, our belief that we can fulfill our own desire as a human being, as a soul incarnate. So much of Chiron has been about right now, this. And if we don't assert ourselves in a certain way, perhaps or being afraid to assert ourselves, that's been a big one since Chiron has been in Aries. And in its retrograde, it's just that much more internally resonant now. It's something that we can't really hide from, and we certainly can't do the wounded healer thing right now with Chiron in retrograde either. And if we are, it's really not getting us anywhere. And I feel like that Mars in that sextile over the weekend was one of those moments where we got to really use that assertive energy of Mars to get to the bottom of something, to talk something out, to even talk yourself out, talk with yourself about something. That was over the weekend, but that did cause the reverberations, I think, that people were experiencing in terms of all that agitated energy. Because if you weren't, maybe you weren't actually interested in getting, bridging Saturn and Uranus for yourself. Well, if that's the case, then you're kind of just like, you're caught, again, Mars is just caught in the loop, the feedback loop. And it's a false sense of, it's just a false sense of self. It's not even who you are. You're just kind of caught in the loop of what you believe is, based on what's being told to you. And this is probably not really any of us, but a lot of people are going through this right now. And this changed something. It's changing the charge in the atmosphere, so to speak. And just this sextile alone, I think, did a lot to do that. And now the Saturn-Uranus square that is starting to become really strong is going to challenge a lot of people at a much more collective level. So let's see here. By the end of today, like I said, the moon will move into Leo. We are coming into, we're really still in the third quarter. Yeah, I would say that we're still roughly in that last quarter phase. We'll soon be in our balsamic phase, truly. So here's the moon in a sextile to Mercury, right? in a sextile to Mercury. And actually it's in a sextile to Mercury, who is at the degree of the new moon. That's going to be on the 25th. So this is a really important sextile too, because this is about needing to emotionally establish your independence for yourself, like truly feeling like yourself, and knowing what that feels like within you, right? And where your resonance is. And it may not be something that you express really strongly, but you will feel it. And it will allow you to listen to the guidance from a Mercury retrograde about, the dawn of a new day, revealing everything has changed, right? And you still are who you are with this moon in Leo. You still feel this sense of, I am who I am, even as you offer that resonance up to the social order, to your relationship, and that will change the dynamic, right? The sands of time will eventually reach the end, and we will flip it, and that will be a new cycle. Yeah, I see. I do feel, I'm personally, I feel like I can't sleep enough at this point. I really feel like the integration is just zapping me in a good way. I don't feel unhappy. I don't feel like drained and sickly or anything like that. It's just like, oh, whoa, this reorientation is pretty real. And, but I also feel like that the Reiki attunements over the last 3 weeks have gotten us up to speed in a way to, just ride out the wave, like the two of discs. We'll be juggling that energy so seamlessly, that it won't even really feel like a disturbance, but more like a ride in some ways. So, and that doesn't mean that people won't have really strong or powerful or disruptive experiences. That's very much seems to be on the docket here, which of course is probably why all of the energy was getting siphoned to the 24th, because it's a powerful time anyway. So why not bring people's awareness to a fear factor, so that instead of us focusing on the potential of new, right, of a brand new cycle. And part of that means we have to offer up everything that has come to fruition so far in order for that to even happen. So you can't keep the baby in the womb forever, right? You can't, the fruit doesn't grow infinitely. It has to be given over. And this is, again, where the Draco energy really missed the mark, right? Because their goal was to just be an infinitely ripening fruit in their own experience without ever having to, go through the cycle of life. And that's trying to bypass nature. And it's had some really almost, I'd say almost unforgivable consequences. And people have to account for themselves, and the relationship, or the 7th house, or Libra, is the accounting of ourselves. And so however you want to shake it, it's coming. And there is a lot in the astrology this week that is giving us some hints and some places to put our energy so that we can make the most out of this and actually embrace the dawn of a new day, revealing everything change, right? To really innovate in that situation instead of seeing it as the end of something. So I think I'm going to leave it there for today, my friends. I have certainly reached my limit, that is for sure. I'm going to share a couple things with you before I sign off. Thank you so much for being here, regardless if you're here on the live or on the playback. So a new process begins, right? This is the astrological forecast for the September equinox. We look at the time period from the September equinox to the December solstice of 2022. It is $99. It is a 90-minute reading, recorded reading with your personal natal chart, your starseed markings, and your progressions for the next 3 months, and to get an idea of what areas of life, what things are presenting themselves as challenges, what type of assets you can expect as well, how to really plan and strategize your own actions and life based on this forecast. So you can go to catalystenergies.net in the description box below, and you can book right from the homepage if you are interested in that. And remember, our equinox is on Thursday evening Eastern Standard Time. Also, I want to share with you that the Aries and Libra lunar transit forecast is now open for the sale rate. So if you are an Aries sun, moon rising, a Libra sun, moon rising, this sale rate for your lunar transit forecast is available for you as well. CatalystEnergies.net. You can book right from the homepage, or you can just send me an email at catalystenergies@gmail.com. That's also in the description box below. And you can just send a message with the subject line new moon in Libra lunar transit forecast, and we will get it started. I'll get started for your reading that I will offer you. So 30 minutes or 60 minutes, it just gives you an idea of the lunar cycle itself and what to expect. Again, your natal chart, your progressions that are relevant, the starseed markings that are relevant, all comes together into one package of a story just for you that you can have and reflect on whenever you need to. So thank you, my friends. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Please take care of yourselves the best you can. Take care of each other. Only after you really take care of yourself. And I will see you guys on Friday for the astrology report. We're going to have, again, our new moon in Libra coming up. So if you're not subscribed, you may want to subscribe so you know when I drop the new moon forecast for Libras, because that's going to be coming this week as well. So I'm just going to check in with the stream real quick and make sure that everything is going well and there's no loose ends and questions. I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.